Let's get some more analysis. Joining me is Daniel Mulino. He's a Labor MP and chair of the House Economics Committee. Do you think we've seen the worst of inflation, as the Treasurer indicated, that he hopes we have off the back of that monthly figure today reported by Ross?
Oh, hi, Kieran, and thanks for having me on today. Well, look, predicting these things is extremely difficult, obviously. But look, as the Treasurer noted, the RBA and the Treasury have both put out forecasts in which they both expect that we have seen the peak of it. And to the extent that you saw any new data points today, they seem consistent with that. So the monthly inflation numbers have come down a bit. And as Ross just pointed out, consumption has grown at quite a low rate in the national accounts figures that we've seen today. So all of these are consistent with inflation having peaked in the previous quarter, but with anything to do with the macroeconomy being as it is so affected by international forces at the moment, you just kind of have to watch each data point as it comes in.
And we're watching it, the RBA's watching it. At a human level, we've heard from, there was one voter that my colleague Andrew Clennell spoke to on a door-knocking series in Cogra in Sydney, and I think he probably speaks for hundreds of thousands of people out there with mortgages right now, very much hurting that the mortgage he's paying up from $4,000 a month to $7,000 in a year. This is really smashing a lot of people right now. Is there any chance that the RBA is finished in their rate rise cycle, or is that too optimistic?
Well, look, I think there's a number of ways in which people are hurting. As you say, people are hurting from higher mortgage payments. People are also hurting from higher rental payments. So those are obviously big expenses for people who have mortgages or who are renting respectively. But the other thing we need to bear in mind is that people are also hurting because of inflation. People are hurting because the cost of living is rising. And as much as we welcome higher wages growth that we've seen over the last few quarters, the wages price index is up to 3.3% on the last reading, that is still below inflation. And so I think the Treasurer and the government are right in saying that our first order of business at the moment is doing what we can to make sure that we bring down inflation. So, yes, high mortgage payments are hurting. People I talk to are clearly saying that, but it's also inflation, and that's what we need to deal with. And that's why the Reserve Bank is focusing on that, and also why the government is making sure that what it does doesn't make the Reserve Bank jobs harder.
The Treasurer ruled out any move on the home in terms of the capital gains tax exemption on the family home. The Prime Minister did earlier in the day, the Treasurer didn't, and then subsequently did at his news conference at lunchtime. Were you a bit surprised that he didn't immediately reject that? Because any notion of moving on the family home would be politically dangerous, to say the least.
Oh, look, I think all that was reflected this morning in the interview that the Treasurer was taking part in is that he didn't particularly want to get into an endless series of ruling in and ruling out. And I think the point that he was making is that at the last election, we made it absolutely clear that taxing multinationals was our priority, and that's what we've been focusing on to date. We had measures in the October budget, and my understanding is that there'll be more measures. The Treasurer, along with the Prime Minister, had announced some very sensible measures in relation to superannuation that will come into effect next term. And I think the Treasurer was simply saying he wanted to talk about those and focus on what we're actually doing, and to not run through a long list of measures and give commentary on things that the government's not looking at.
Will the Treasurer be able to, and this is something that he said he wants to do, I think a lot of people will be watching closely to see if he does it, and that is to remove the indexation on those pre-2004 superannuation schemes for people in Parliament prior to 2004, for judges, public servants and so on. Very generous superannuation. The Prime Minister set to have $400,000 a year when he retires or thereabouts. We're talking multiples of $3 million in a superannuation balance. Will the Treasurer move on that as promised yesterday?
Oh, look, my understanding is that the announcement yesterday was about super balances of more than $3 million. That is clear. But that the Treasurer has made clear that he will also look to include defined benefit schemes on a level playing field basis. Now, one of the complications is trying to figure out exactly which ones you would include. I was actually yesterday talking to the Actuaries Institute about a lot of the amazing and analytical work they do, which supports policy in a whole range of areas. And I've actually talked to a couple of actuaries today about some of the challenges of figuring out who should be and who shouldn't be included from the defined benefits world. Look, personally, I think from a fairness perspective, we should be including defined benefit schemes where they are like for like appropriately included. But there is a bit of nuance in how you do that, and that's why it's appropriate.
Funds, including those
well,
ones
the
for politicians on.
Look, I think the pre-2004 political accounts, where they are appropriately included on a like-for-like basis. But there is a bit of nuance, and I think that's where the Treasurer has flagged. We've now got a couple of months between now and the budget to undertake consultation so that we do that sensibly. This is not work that you rush into, and it's entirely appropriate that on that set of issues that we consult with the experts.
Chair of the House Economics Committee, Labor MP Daniel Mulino, great to get your insights as always. Thanks, appreciate it.
Thanks, Kieran.